Hello and welcome. Nice to see a whole bunch of people joining into the call today. A little hiccup as we're getting started there. Everything is great though. Hopefully my co-host Noel will be able to reconnect shortly, but otherwise I'm happy to kick off. So I'm going to share my own screen in a moment, and I just want to start with good morning, everyone. Oh, I see you've joined with my name there. Noel, I might hand it over to you, Noel, to kick it off.
Good morning. Can you hear me, Vincent?
Can.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our exclusive NAB Indigenous Business Cybersecurity webinar. I'd like to welcome our Indigenous business customers, as well as other valued customers from across the bank and our soon-to-be customers who've joined us today for this webinar. My name is Noel Prakash, and I'm the lead for Indigenous Business and Community Banking in NAB, and it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to be hosting you this morning. Before we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land I'm dialing in from, the Wiradjuri people, and I pay my deepest respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend the respect to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are on the webinar with us today. We know that Indigenous businesses are facing an increased threat to cybersecurity. We recognise the importance of supporting this sector and the need for a collaborative approach to cybersecurity. NAB is committed to helping our clients stay safe. Our team here at NAB work closely with businesses to build awareness of these risks and always keep cybersecurity front of mind. This morning, we will provide you with an update of cybersecurity environment and some of the specific examples it's seen in the Indigenous business sector. We will be covering invoice fraud, social engineering, ransomware, business email compromise, and safeguards. We'll be running a live Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please input your questions as we go, and I'll make sure we get them answered. Enough of me now. Please allow me to introduce our expert presenter, Winston Lewis-Smith. Winston's a cybersecurity specialist with a human-centric focus. As a cyber fraud security professional, Winston is passionate about educating and empowering NAB colleagues, customers, and community keep themselves safe online and in the physical world. Winston has a Master's of Cybersecurity and over 25 years worth of experience in business ownership, ICT, marketing, and public speaking. Winston is regularly requested to provide subject matter expertise on security awareness and culture with our customers and in the market. So you are in safe hands. Over to you, Winston. And please remember to put your questions in the Q&A panel below as we go. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Noel. I appreciate that. I hope everyone's having a marvelous day. As introduced, my name is Winston Lewis-Smith. I'm a senior consultant in NAB's Group Security Advisory and Awareness team. And apart from the complicated introduction, to me there, all the stuff, very basically, my job is to teach customers, community on how they can stay safe online and in the physical world. So I'm really passionate about this. I love working with people and helping them achieve security in their day-to-day life as much as possible. And one of the things that I always like to preface this conversation with is that, we work hard day to day to get this message out to people. We want to make sure that we keep everyone as safe as possible. And we want people to also understand that this isn't just about protecting businesses, right? This is about protecting people. And, if in this conversation today, you get a couple of aha moments and then you take that conversation back and have this conversation around the dinner table or around the barbecue or, with your friends, family, business, associates, team alike, then I feel like the message is getting out there, and I really feel like we can make a difference that way by sharing this message out to everyone. But I'm a senior consultant in the team here. It's great. You might be probably not surprised to know that NAB has a pretty large security team that works around the clock to protect our customers' data, everyone's money, our colleagues, and so on and so forth. You might be surprised to know how closely all the different banks and government all actually work together. In fact, it's one of the things I like most about security is that, I'm not competing with anyone. We actually all work really closely together because we know that we all share the same adversaries. We all share the same, I suppose, enemy in that way. And we know that something that's going to hit us is going to hit the next bank down the road, and something that's going to hit them is going to come up and hit us as well. So we all work super close together. And you're probably also not surprised to know that NAB, like many organizations, spend a bucket of money protecting all of these products and services and data and so on and so forth as well. And I suppose from a criminal's perspective, it's really important to think about where the criminals attack. Because why would a criminal attack a well-guarded network when they can attack a person instead? And we're seeing such a major spin from criminals attacking, like the technical side of things, to hacking people instead. And that's where I come in. So whilst NAB has great security teams that put all sorts of rules in place and speed bumps when you're making transactions that say, you sure you want to do this, and all these sorts of technical things, realistically, once an email gets through to you, once a mobile phone call gets through to you, or an SMS lands in your phone, the technical stuff is out the window. All those rules don't matter anymore, and it's our human ability to be able to recognize and respond appropriately to the message that's coming in as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the human side of security and what we can do as people to better protect ourselves, our businesses, and those people around us as well. So these are the things we're going to talk about: the environment, some of the threats that we face as individuals and businesses, and then the safeguards that you can do, how to report, and some of the extra information you can reach out to as well. So we're probably under a rock if you haven't seen some of these cyber breaches. I like to know that I'm having a bit of a two-way conversation with people too. So if you can show me by a thumbs up, or, you can hit the little reaction thing if you can see it on your screen there, if you've seen or even been involved in any of these data breaches or come across any of these things that have happened recently in the news. That way I know I'm getting a bit of engagement, because at the moment it's a one-way. There we go. I see the thumbs up coming up on my screen there. That's great. Thank you so much. That makes me feel like I'm having a two-way conversation, so I really appreciate that. But for example, I was in the Medibank breach, and I'm not even with Medibank. In fact, I rang them and said, what happened? Why am I in this breach? And they said, oh, well, you got a quote from us a few years ago. So often, even through no fault of our own, we can be involved in cybercrime and be a victim of it as well. But what we do know, though, is that it's a big problem. Okay, the average loss for medium businesses in Australia is pushing $100,000. That's grown by 10%. Around the world, it's trillions of dollars. In fact, it's estimated now that cybercrime is worth more than the international drug trade. And reports are made so often, it's starting to get a bit ridiculous, in fact. Unfortunately, what we do know is that probably less than a quarter of breaches or scams and fraud are reported in the first place. So what we love is that the more people who normalize having this conversation and reporting if something goes wrong, the better visibility we have about what's actually going on in the marketplace. I think what's really important to note here is that it's not just dollar figures that impacts people, right? There's damage to personal identity and reputation. There's loss of business or employment opportunities. There's impact on emotional, psychological well-being. I've spoken to people who've fallen victim to identity theft, and it has taken them years to recover. And even after recovering, every so often, it still rears its head when they're trying to apply for something in their day-to-day life. What we do also know is that 3/4 of breaches involve a human element. And again, this is why I'm so passionate about working with people. And I want to give you some examples, because what I'm going to do over the next little while is I'm going to talk about some of the threats that we face, as I've told you about, and the cybercrime that we face into. And I don't want you to think I'm being like the harbinger of doom here and just doom and gloom. Although I do sort of want to scare you a little bit, right? I think a little bit scared is good because it motivates people to take action. But I also want you to think about the good stories, right? I want you to think about the saves that can happen too if we're vigilant. because I did a very similar presentation like this to an education customer a while ago, and they reached out afterwards and they said, thank you for that presentation. Because of your presentation, we saved sending a scammer $450,000. Now, that put a big smile on my face. Sure, the customer had a very big smile on their face. You know, for me, like my boss's boss, they had a big smile on their face too, so everyone's happy, right? But that's the kind of aha moment that I hope you can reach through this. And that's the change that dealing with humans and that human approach can make for people too. So who are the cyber criminals? What is that image that movies and media have given us for so long about what cybercrime looks like? And if you're thinking of something like this, like that evildoer in their mother's basement with a hoodie on, you know, pizza boxes and Red Bull cans strewn behind them, that's a really common image, right? And for many people, that might even be comforting because clearly this person is too busy hacking NASA to worry about little old me. But what we do know is the reality is a lot more sophisticated than that. And this is more like a call center, more like traditional businesses. They have profit-driven, have KPIs, sale targets. I do want to add something here, by the way. This is not a real cybercrime den in the photo there. It's just an image from the internet. So if you recognize someone in the picture there, please don't ring them and say Winston called you a hacker. It's just a picture from the internet. But it does illustrate the maturity or sophistication that we face into on a day-to-day basis. And they have salaries, they have processes to improve their scammy processes. In fact, we've even heard of them offering graduate programs targeting top-performing students straight out of university. So it's important to realize that as businesses, they don't care about us. They don't care about our financial situation. They don't care about our personal situations. If you have a device, any device that's connected to the internet, be it a phone or telecommunications, we are a target. Okay, it's just merely a business prospect from their perspective. And as I said, it's incredibly lucrative for them. So unfortunately, it's going to continue. But there are so many different types of cyber criminals, right? You've got the organized crime, often really financially motivated. You have hacktivists that are often ideologically motivated. Those government nation state actors that might be more espionage. And then, of course, malicious insiders, sometimes people doing the wrong thing that work for us too. But let's talk a little bit about how they hack us, right? We do know that the most common way to date is still emails. I would ask people to put up their hand and say, have you received a suspicious email in the last week? And most of us would comfortably be able to say yes. Okay, I see one hand has gone up already, right? Most of us can say yes. So here is an example. And thank you, thumbs up. Great. I can see you paying attention. I love it. This, by the way, if you haven't already recognized it, is not a legitimate message from NAB, okay? It's a dodgy message from someone impersonating NAB, or spoofing is the other word. But it is important to be able to identify them. I also think, by the way, as a business, it's important to know for ourselves and our staff how to communicate with people in a least suspicious way possible. So as I go through this, have a think about how we form communications and emails to people and how we can craft it in a way that makes our communications the less suspicious too. But in this case, you've probably already picked up some of the red flags. You can see it's reasonably well written and they've used a NAB brand, but you can also see it's not from a NAB email address. There's no greeting. I mean, the criminals will send this to 100,000 people at a time, and they usually don't know a person's first name or can't be bothered typing it in. And they'll say things like dear user, dear customer, dear employee, things like that, or dear email address. And then they'll do things like requesting some sort of information. They'll often make it urgent, ask you to click on a link, and there'll be no NAB sign off in this case. Now, please remember, while this example appears to be impersonating NAB, it could come from any organization. It could come from someone impersonating an energy company to a government entity like ATO, and so on and so forth. Now, these different red flags, we call them, they're going to come in different ways, right? Sometimes they'll all be there, sometimes one of them will be there. but one of them is uniform, almost across all types of scam, whether it's a phone call, an email, an SMS, almost always has this, and that's the urgent request. This is why reasonable people become unreasonable. People you think would not fall for a scam or phishing email or whatever it happens to be can fall for them. And it's because the criminals are really good and they've been trained at hijacking the emotional centers of our brain. And so these things are absolutely key to pay attention to and understanding, because some groups are more susceptible to scams and fraud, and other groups are less susceptible to different types of scams and fraud. And it's really important to pay attention to these things. So you can also be familiar with these where at all possible. Hang on, give me a second. Cool. One of the tips that I always give to people here is an example of how we fall victim to these things. And it's my example, right? I teach people how to recognize scams every day. And I'll give you an example here. I love to order things online. I'm not going to go so far as to call it an addiction, but maybe I should. But I love to buy stuff online, okay? I don't know what it is. Okay, I'm a geek. It's just how it is. The problem with that, however, is that I'm always expecting a package. Now, has anyone here ever received one of those fake Australia Post SMSs with someone trying to scam you with your details? Now, most of us have, right? Or traveled toll or something like that. Now, because I am always expecting a package, even though I train people about this every day, when I get one of those dodgy SMSs, I still get a little bit excited. That's what I mean. If they can manipulate my emotions like that, they can manipulate anyone's emotions. And so that's the key here, is that if you're ever being threatened, if there's ever a reward, your account's going to be shut down, there's been fraud on your account, if you don't respond to this email, hang on a minute, there we go. Your account's going to be shut down, someone's hacked your internet, whatever it happens to be, that's when you stop. It will never hurt to slow down and take your time, especially if there's a threat. You can ring on a known or publicly listed phone number to be able to verify things. So across the board, always make sure you know where you're going, whether it's a link or even a QR code. Has anyone come across a QR code in their day-to-day life at the moment? QR codes, we scan them with our phone and they take us to a website. It's just like a link and they need to be treated with caution too. I'll give you an example. It was reported out of New Zealand, scammers replacing QR codes on parking meters to redirect people who are paying for parking to their own payment gateways. And so even with QR codes, it's super important to be vigilant about where you're scanning and where you're going to as well. But if you did click on that, you might see something like this, which is a credential harvesting site. It's not a real NAB domain. And it's really important to make sure that we always check the actual address we're going to make sure it is, or even better, if you can avoid clicking on the link, avoid clicking on the link. Go to your web browser, type in ato.gov.au or nab.com.au or whatever it happens to be as well. And then you know, or use a bookmark, then you know you're going to a place that you know. So here is a SMS phishing example. We've all probably received SMS scams. These things are rife. 30% of scams last year started with an SMS. And unfortunately, using legal technology, scammers can impersonate or spoof brands, and our smartphones are just a little too smart for their own good. And so what can happen is that you might see a few legitimate messages. Let's say in this example, it was from NAB, and then someone has changed the from name, and our smartphone's gone, oh, I recognize that person. I'll put that message at the bottom of chain of messages. It does not mean that NAB's been hacked. What it does mean is that someone's impersonated it. So we've worked on a day-to-day basis to remove these or reduce these things. And so whilst it's reduced, it's not perfect, okay? What NAB has done, though, is that we, as a matter of policy now, we do not send links in unexpected SMSs. And so what that means is that you're pretty safe to assume that if you receive an SMS from NAB with a link, it's a scam. And I think that's pretty cool. But remember, it's not just NAB that can be impersonated. It could be ATO, it could be Telstra, it could be Vodafone, or even Mum. Okay? And so if we get a message from someone purporting to be Mum, I'm not saying everyone start ignoring your mum. What I'm saying is just be vigilant when these messages come in, please. And they do have the audacity to ask for all sorts of information, including people holding their licenses and stuff like that. And you can imagine the sort of damage that can be done. Let's talk about phone scams really briefly, okay? Regarding phone scams, businesses receive these sorts of scams all the time, okay? It's very simple for criminals to get onto LinkedIn. They can find out who might be a payment approver. They might find out who works in technical support. So there's all sorts of different ways that the criminals get access to companies' information. And they do things like they'll ring someone who's in HR and they'll say, I'm your employee, I'm a remote worker, can you change my payment details, please? Right? Or they'll ring someone and say, hi, I'm from your tech support. In fact, MGM in the USA runs casinos in Las Vegas. They got hacked because someone rang an employee and said, I'm your tech support. I'm just going to email you something. Can you just open that, please? And boom. Tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. People couldn't access their rooms. They had to shut the casino down. We're talking about major consequences. And so these things are super important to be vigilant. My personal policy, I just don't give out information on inbound calls. It's that simple. But it's really important to note two things. First of all, NAB's never going to ask you to transfer your money to another account to keep it safe, right? Unless you ring us to say, I need a new account, whatever it happens to be, that's you, okay? But we're not going to ring you and say, we need you to install software. NAB's not going to do that to access your device, etc. And always read your SMS codes. So when you get that code that says, here's a secret code, do not share this code with anyone, there's a secret message in that. Do not share it with anyone. Now, unfortunately, with smartphones and smartwatches, it pops up the code nice and easy, and a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to all the extra text. And especially if someone's got someone on the phone and they're manipulating them, okay, it's really important to get off the phone and call back on a known or publicly listed phone number, okay? When it comes to fraud and scams, identity crime, malware, we know that, Indigenous people are unfortunately more likely to, twice as likely as non-Indigenous people in terms of some research that was done to experience online abuse and harassment, malware, identity crime. And so understanding that means that getting this message out to the community is so important, right? To be vigilant. Don't give out information. NAB's not going to call you and ask you for this information, right? Or get you to hand out your NAB Connect details. And Telstra's not going to do it either, okay? So what do the criminals do with this, right? Have we all heard of the dark web? Might have heard of the dark web. Most of us have heard of the dark web these days. Anyone been on the dark web? Don't admit it. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. Actually, funnily enough, even though criminals love it because of the anonymity, actually, it's also used for legitimate purposes. For example, in some country, or somewhat legitimate, I suppose, in some countries where social media platforms might be banned, they can use the dark web to have a presence too. But the dark web is an underground, bustling underground marketplace with highly vetted forums with all the criminals working together. And so all of these identities they steal and bank accounts they hack and all that, often it ends up on the dark web. Anyone want to venture a guess at how much our identity is worth on the dark web? The average amount, I think Channel 9 reported Australian identities selling around $20. We've seen them as low as $12 in regularly. And even here you can see it was 100 Australian fools. That's name, address, date of birth, phone number, etc. for $200 US. Okay, now this is from a blog that was on the dark web. It's since been taken down, but you can see that information is available on the dark web and the criminals will on-sell it They don't always use it for their own means, and they can get pretty good money. But it also means, unfortunately, our identity is cheap. It goes to show how much they take. It's also not just identity, right? It's not just bank accounts. It's a very mature marketplace. You can see here that the vendors have trust rankings, reviews, levels, guarantees, tutorials, and now they even offer services to each other. And so now one organization might say, well, I'm not great at ransomware, so I'll just sign up to this other criminal organization's ransomware affiliate program because they're good at it, and I'll just use their tutorials to implement it and give them a percentage of every ransom taken. And it's really made, the dark web's really been a major player in this massive explosion of cybercrime. Because in the past, maybe you had to be pretty sophisticated, entry level. New starters are able to get involved as well. Now I'm just watching, make sure no one's leaving the call, just go, I'm in the wrong business. No, we're all good. Okay, great. So it is sophisticated. So now let's quickly talk about some of the scams we see facing Australian businesses. It's the second largest by loss after investment scams. Now, I would be fair to say that everyone would have seen an email or a communication like this at some time in their life, right? I mean, most adults, right, generally would see something like this. What is it? It's a bill to pay, right? Buying something and being given a bill to pay. It's a pretty common thing. Now, this could come from a plumber. It could come from a purchase of a car. It could come from a conveyancer for a transfer of a house. It could come from all sorts of different things, a vendor, a client, or it's being sent to a client and so on. But imagine receiving this and then receiving a post email that says, hi, actually, sorry, I sent you the wrong bank details. Please send them to this account as well. Now, what's happened here is Barry's emails have been hacked, and the criminal has been waiting and watching Barry's emails and then abuses Barry's emails to redirect payment requests, change bank details, chat to customers or vendors, and can do a whole heap of damage. This is called business email compromise. And a lot of businesses that I talk to on a day-to-day basis have experienced this in some degree or another, not necessarily falling victim, but see examples of it quite regularly. Many of us now have emails in the cloud. Would that be fair to say? Whether it's Outlook Online, Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, Gmail, right? I mean, so much of us have emails in the cloud. Unfortunately, if all you need is a username and password and someone gets access to your emails, have a think about what they have access to. And the answer is that there is everything, right? And so if there was one thing you did after this presentation, if you hadn't done it yet, and if there was one thing that I advise people on a day-to-day basis, apart from verify everything, is turn on your multi-factor authentication. Because there's two sides of the coin here, right? The first is, how do we stop our own emails as a business from being hacked and then abused? And the second is, how do we stop ourselves from sending money to a scammer? And so the first is, the best way to today is to have your multi-factor or 2FA, MFA, second factor authentication turned on. So it's not just your username and password, it's that annoying code that you get, or the NAB Connect token, or whatever it happens to be, the extra code, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, whatever it is, to be able to authenticate. If there was one thing, that would be what I recommend to people to do, okay, is turn on MFA. Now, regularly I get businesses say to me, what do I turn it on? Everything. Do you have accounting software in the cloud, right? Do you have social media accounts that your business uses and relies on? Are there private social media accounts that are linked to those business ones? All of these things need to be considered, right? Do you have customer relationship management software that you use? HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever it happens to be, right? There's so many things. They all need to have this turned on, right? To help better protect your business day to day. The second side of the coin is this business process. And that is verify. Now, this is not just you. This is anyone new who gets started in your business needs to know to verify things that come in, right? They must verify they must verify everything, any change, any request, anything. For me, I had my rental company reach out and say, we need to change your bank payment details. What did I do? I picked up the phone and I rang them on a phone number that I know, right? When I purchased a vehicle, they sent an invoice. What happened? I didn't just pay it. It was a reputable company, but I still rang them on their publicly listed phone number to verify their bank details. It's just absolutely vital to be able to do that, okay? So new staff as well must be trained in this. Why? Because I see these things targeting new people all the time. How's that? Because anyone who starts in a business is so often on LinkedIn going, I'm proud to announce that I just got my new job at such and such a place, right? Criminals are watching LinkedIn. They know to target new people. It's not hard for them to figure out where that person might even be positioned in the business based on their job title, and to be able to target someone who might be new and wanting to impress the boss. Which takes me to CEO impersonation and spear phishing. Super hard to stop, but anyone can go and open a Gmail account. Now, Ross McEwen is no longer our CEO. It's just been handed over to Andrew Irvine, but anyone could go and start a Ross McEwen 3117@gmail.com account and send that email to anyone pretending to be Ross. And they'll have a great story, right? They'll say, oh, I'm at a conference. My work laptop's run out of battery. I need to be able to make this transfer. It's urgent. So again, always having approval processes in place for that. Now, we've all come across ransomware, at least heard about it. It's really rife. It's nice to know that actually, even though the amount of it is happening, about half as many people are paying ransom these days. So that's really good to know. Ransomware is it's a type of malware or malicious software that gets into our computer and it locks up all the files so we can't access them. And then they say, if you don't pay this ransom, we're not going to give you access to your files again. It's really important to note that paying a ransom is no guarantee that you're going to get access again. And also, paying a ransom can trigger counterterrorism and anti-money laundering because it might be some organization that's sanctioned. So it's always important to be really careful about how you treat ransomware. So I've spoken about some of these things already. A lot of people ask me, what about artificial intelligence? What about this? What about that? We haven't seen a ton of it in Australia, but it will be coming because we're seeing it happen in the UK and US. My recommendation to people, again, is verify on a known number, right? If someone is impersonating someone, reach out on a phone number that you know that you can reach out directly to them to check. If you've got an internal communications system, use that. If you think it's from an employee, a colleague, use that internal communication system, right? If I get someone pretending to be my mum, I'll call my mum on the known phone number. If I get a message from someone purporting to be my brother from a new phone number, I'm going to call on his old number to check, right? It's just important. If I get a message request from someone on Facebook or LinkedIn and you're not sure, you can do reverse image searches on Google to make sure that these people, maybe they've used that image elsewhere and so on. Like this example here where a woman fell for a romance scam. This is a celebrity in the US and they'd used his face over videos to scam person. It was pretty nasty. But it's not all bad news, right? I hope I haven't scared anyone too much, right? A little bit, like I said, is good to be able to take some of the action. And let's talk about that now, because Microsoft says that 99% of breaches could be stopped with basic security hygiene. And so I want to walk you through some of that basic stuff that you can do now to make a difference to your business and even in your home and personal life as well. Now, why do I lock my car when I go to the shops, right? Why do I do it? Why do I lock my house or my business when I leave? Why do I do that? I mean, I don't lock my car to stop Vin Diesel from Fast and the Furious from stealing my car, right? Because he's a professional, he's going to steal a Ferrari, let alone my car, you know what I mean? But it does stop the crimes of opportunity. It stops the person walking through the parking lot, trying every handle on every car to see what easy pickings they can find. And the vast majority of attacks on the web are like that too. And so that basic hygiene is going to make that difference. So let's talk about that now. First of all, however you do business and however you do security, and it could be that you have an external provider, it could be that you do it yourself, it could be you have an IT person, or it could be the kid next door, right? I don't know how your IT is run, but what I do know is that the Australian Cybersecurity Centre has what's called the Essential 8, with handy tick boxes where you can really easy get a benchmark or an idea of where your business sits, and then you can understand what you can do next to help secure your business. So we'll send out a pack post presentation that we can also forward out to all of you that'll have these references in them as well. So you don't need to write it down if you don't want, unless you want to take immediate action now too anyway. And I'm not going to go into it in detail, but it's a great way to get an assessment of where your business is at. I've had other businesses reach out to me after doing this and say, thank you for that. We thought we gave this to our third-party provider for our computers, and we actually found out that they weren't testing the backups properly, or they weren't backing up like we thought they were, or whatever it happens to be. So really good way to be able to get an idea of where we're at. It's Australian. It's really simple and well regarded. Let's talk about passwords really briefly. Who loves passwords? No, no one. No one likes passwords. Passwords are terrible, right? I mean, they've got to be 30 characters long, 20 different languages. We have to have one for every account. It's difficult. Now, before I start talking about how we can solve that problem, let's talk about the worst passwords. First of all, every year they take the top passwords that have shown up in data breaches, and they get like the top 10 million and 5 million of these. Anyone want to venture a guess at what the worst passwords are of last year? Often people will say things like password, QWERTY, and so on. So you might be laughing to yourself, but to this day, these are still the worst passwords that are showing up in data breaches that people are using. I think the only thing worse than using one of these passwords is writing it on a sticky note and putting it on your monitor because you can't remember it. Please don't do that, okay? But what do we do? I was in regional South Australia. I was speaking to a customer, and this customer said to me, you know what? But what if I just have one really good, really strong, really secure password? And you know what? That's similar to what I used to do, right? I used to have like 5 passwords. I'd have one basic one really secure one, and it'd be from like websites I don't care about to banking and a couple in between. But I said to that customer, I said, the thing is, it's not about the quality of your password. It's about the quality of the place you give your password to. Because through no fault of our own, some company can be breached, right? Maybe we give that password to a recipe company to get that, like a website, to get a recipe for a muffin we want to cook, and they get breached and they don't have good security. But criminals are clever. They will test that password against everything. So if you've used the same password for everything, the criminals, unfortunately, they'll breach more stuff. And I would much prefer to lose access or lose my password to one recipe website than all of the things that I use. And people use lots of things, right? The average person has 80, many people have well over 300 different accounts. So what do we do? My recommendation to people is this: use a password management tool, okay? What is a password management tool? Jump onto your search and have a look for one. They're on, excuse me, there's plenty of reputable ones out there, and it's like a magic book of all of our passwords. My kids are 10 and 11 years old. They use it. They don't even know their passwords. All we've done is set a good, secure master password. It can't be easy. It's got to be secure. And then all of the passwords are then offered up when they're on the right site, and they can go and get it. I can share passwords to them. It's fantastic. I would even go so far to say that if you're not using one in 2024, yeah, you're setting yourself up potentially for a bit of pain. Okay, so please check out password management tools. There's a ton of reputable ones out there as well. And of course, have your multi-factor authentication turned on too. Now, internally, there are tons of, there are other safeguards you can do for you and your business. Again, this will be included in the pack. NAB Connect has a whole heap of security features that you can take advantage of for you and the people in your business. Being aware, making sure you share that awareness with people. If you see something suspicious, take a screenshot, send it around, unless it's a QR code, in which case, please make sure you don't send that to people. But don't just forward an email, right? Because people go, oh, look what came from the boss. I'll click on that. Don't do that. Right? If you can use different computers to create and approve transactions, and obviously using different passwords for different accounts is vital in this today's world. Process-wise, always verify, verify, verify. New accounts, changes to instructions, use a known phone number wherever you can. And then have agreed processes in place for payment requests as well. If something does happen, it's vital to report it straight away. Now, what's pretty cool is that we actually saw that First Nations victims were more likely than non-Indigenous victims to seek help or advice from police or report cyber. So that's really cool. Less likely, unfortunately, for identity crime or misuse and fraud and scams. What we do want, though, thank you. What we do want to know, though, is we do need you to report it straight away. Absolutely immediately. The criminals want to move that money quickly. We need you to report it to us. So if they've moved the money, we can contact the next bank. We can put the flags in place. We can do what we need to do. And if, we try and recover those funds wherever we can. And if we can't, or you're not happy with the outcome, always please, you can raise a complaint internally or afterwards you can take it to the complaints authority too. Now, you'll get this slide on nab.com.au/security. We do tons of webinars. We do personal bank focused ones. There's a whole heap of resources that are available to you. We'll send that to you as well post-presentation. So you'll get some of these resources that are available to you. But really, these are the key things, okay? Implement the Essential 8. Turn on your multi-factor authentication. Have your backups and automatic updates turned on for everything in your business, okay? Your antivirus, your updates, this is really going to help reduce the likelihood of being impacted by something, okay? And then teach your team. I'm going to finish up with that just to talk about a couple of offers that we've launched as a security team here at NAB to help support our small business marketplace. So depending where you fall into that, I'm just going to share this with you anyway. But we have a free security assessment with Microsoft third party that's available. It takes a couple of hours to do. Please take advantage of that if you want. And then as a small business as well, we've just launched this in the last 2 weeks with CrowdStrike. You can head to nab.com.au/business offers, and then you can use a special code that we will also include in the email out to people. In fact, I can send this out to everybody as well. But CrowdStrike have an advanced antivirus. It helps protect against a whole heap of threats. You can use NAB Cyber 2024 as your promo code, and there's a ton of value. In fact, for businesses that take up just 5 devices, it's about $450 saved value, and then it just goes up from there. So any small businesses that want to take advantage of that, please do so as well. But that's it from me. I'm going to open up for questions. I appreciate the time that everyone has given me to have a listen today. I'm passionate about it. We're here to help you. If there's anything I can do to help answer a question related to your business, please pipe up into the Q&A. If there's something specific to you, even if you've got a good story that you want to share, we're happy to help you with those questions as well, or stories. And I'm going to hand it back to Noel now too. So I appreciate your time, everybody.
Thank you, Winston, for that amazing insight, and more importantly, some of those some very, very practical hints and things that we can start to do immediately to help us. There's a couple of questions flowing through. It's one's from Christy. If I send some money to someone, can I get it back?
I was on mute. Oh,
Yeah.
So typical. If I send some money to someone, can I get it back? So this is the thing, right? I mean, as a bank, we have to allow people to make approved transactions. And so in many cases, for example, there was Brisbane City Council, someone rang Brisbane City Council pretending to be a vendor, and they paid 9 invoices, almost $450,000 to that person, but they made an approved change and then approved transactions. In that case, the liability was on Brisbane City Council. They still owed that vendor the money. So we work around, this is why it's so important to report immediately, right? Because that way we can try and stop the transactions even before they've happened or at the next bank or wherever it happens to be. And we will recover as much as we possibly can. That's when somebody has been scammed. In the case of fraud, that's where the bank systems have been abused. It's a different scenario. There are protections in place when it comes to fraud. But when it comes to scams, this is why getting the message out there. It's a team sport. We work around the clock to avoid it. We need people out there to be getting this message out there to stop, to report it immediately so we can stop it. And if you don't, like I said, if we can't recover that money, you can always raise it internally as a complaint as well. I hope that answers that question. We have rules around it. We think they're fair. Hopefully we can recover the funds for people.
Thanks, Brad. This one's in relation to invoices outbound.
Yep.
How best to support customers to validate that the invoice has generally come from another business or from our business?
That's a great question. Do you know what I've seen recently is I've seen lawyers, for example, that actually put on their emails now in big red text saying, do not make any transactions until you've called our business to verify, right? Called on our landline or whatever it happens to be for the business. I think that's a great communication that as a business we can do on a day-to-day basis. I think having the conversation with our vendors and our customers and saying, here's my information. Please, if there's any ever changes, reach out directly to verify them, and taking that responsibility ourselves as a business to make sure that people know to contact us with if there are any changes as well.
Thanks, Winston. There's another one that just popped through.
Someone said at scale though. There are tools, like I know there are some tools that require, I think it's FSure, for example, that allows both sides, and it's on that business office page too, but allows both sides to be within a tool, but It's complicated, right? It's a little bit more tricky. So at scale, like I said, I think it's important to have on, maybe you can add the commentary on your invoices to actually say any changes, please contact us, right? On a number that right? So I think, again, that unfortunately comes down to awareness, because it's really hard to stop someone setting up nabinvoices.org.au and pretending to be NAB to send those invoices, and we might not even know, right? So again, it's that awareness. So at scale, I recommend getting those communications out to your customers when you're bringing them on, getting those communications out on a day-to-day basis to people as part of your business communications.
Thank you, Brad. Hope that Winston, we hope that answered for Brad.
Yeah.
Another one that just come through, and this is a tricky one. Is there any harm done if I only click on the phishing link and not input any details?
That's a good question, actually. Generally, I would say no. Right? It's if you're not entering any information, for the most part, it's you can just close it, freak out a little bit, and then that's fine. Okay. What we do know though is that they can also track who's clicked, if that makes sense. And maybe they'll go, oh, this person might be susceptible. So what I recommend is that if you do click, just maybe up your vigilance levels that little bit, right? Check your bank detail, make sure you're checking your bank details, and so on and so forth. But for the most part, a click is okay. There are some slight edge cases where they've done damage, but those things are usually fixed very, very quickly. They don't usually waste good hacks like that on us average folk.
Very good. Look, I think that there's no more questions coming through. look, on that note, Winston, thank you very much. And thank you to all our customers and who have been patiently waiting and listening to that. I hope they get something out of it today. And we certainly hope that we can run more of these going forward. So Winston and the team, Kat and Linda, thank you very much for organising this. And to our customers, thank you for taking the time out to spend an hour of your time. Hopefully you've taken something out of it today that you can use in your business, and also sharing that with community. It certainly will help. So thank you once again, and hopefully we'll chat soon. Thank you.